Hey, Trailblazers, put down that credit card. Today, we're talking about why most courses and coaching programs are really just a waste of money and what's really needed to make your business work. So stick around. If you want to build a legitimate, profitable online business without shiny objects, without the hypey gimmicks, and without the stress and overwhelm, if you want to make more money without having to be present online all day, every day, pumping out content that nobody sees and hustling DMs to generate leads and sales, then this is the place for you. Welcome to the Digital Trailblazer Podcast, your online business university, where you'll learn how ordinary people start from ground zero with no influence, no email list or audience to sell to, and no business or marketing experience, and go from working 9-to-5 jobs to building successful 6- and 7-figure online businesses and all the steps in between. Learn the strategies that worked and what didn't. Learn the mistakes that they made and how to avoid them, and then learn their plans for scaling their businesses and taking things to the next level. All so that you can build your business faster and easier and make more money without sacrificing the things that are important to you in your life. I'm your host, Leah Getz, and with me is my husband, Todd. Now, let's get to it with today's guest. Now, I think this is a really important conversation to have because part of human nature, part of our brain chemistry, part of just who we are as people, we like to buy stuff. And buying courses, buying coaching programs can be really exciting and thrilling, but I feel like there's some pitfalls that we need to talk about to make sure that people are actually not wasting their money and doing the right things to move their businesses forward.
Yeah. And when we look back to the way that we bought courses and coaching programs early on in our business, typically what would happen is we'd see this new thing and the person selling the course would make a promise and they'd be like, hey, this one new strategy helped me to scale my business to 7 figures in the last 3 months and blah, 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 blah. They'll make this big promise and they'll make it seem like this one thing was all they needed to get to the goal that they wanted to achieve. And of course, you see all the testimonials and other people getting results. And so you buy the course and you do the thing. And then the result that you get is much, much less than what you expected. A lot of times you get 0 results. Sometimes you might have a little bit of progress, but it's not really what you wanted. You'll leave disappointed and then you go looking for the next shiny object. And then you come across another course that basically does the same thing. Hey, this new strategy that I'm doing helped me to scale my business. And so you scrap the last thing that you did. You jump onto this new thing, you implement, and then basically the same thing happens. And so maybe you think that, well, maybe I just need more hand holding. And so rather than just buy a couple $100 course or $1,000 course, now maybe you're jumping onto a $5,000 or $10,000 or $20,000 coaching program, and it's the same experience. You invest all this money, you do the thing, and you just don't get the result that you want. And we've experienced this several times in our business. For example, webinars. I think we've bought at least 4 or 5 different courses on how to do webinars. And I mean, now we're pretty darn good at webinars. But the thing is, what made webinars successful in our business isn't necessarily the one course. It was more so, and this is what we really want to talk about today, is more so the system that we put that webinar into.
Yeah, because the reality is one piece of a system isn't going to transform your business. If you are missing the system as a whole, or you're hodgepodge, a little of this, a little of that, and it's not all connected, and you don't have an entire ecosystem, an entire process to get traffic, to generate leads, to nurture, qualify, move them through to a sale, and provide a great customer experience once they're there and get referrals. If you don't have that ecosystem and that whole process and system figured out, that one little thing can't really do much for you.
And so probably the next question people have is, okay, well, what do you mean by system? There's been decades of research done around marketing and sales and what it takes to take a person from cold prospect to paying client. And so, for example, we know that it takes a minimum of 7 to 12 touch points in order to get someone to make a buying decision with you. More recently, in the internet age, Google has done studies about what it takes to create a buyer online. And so this is where they came up with their 7-11-4 rule. And what that rule states is that in order for someone to go from not knowing you to making a buying decision with you, it's going to require somewhere around 7 hours of interaction with your brand online across 11 different touch points and 4 different platforms. And so that's what we're dealing with here. And when you think about buying that one secret strategy that's going to scale your business to 7 figures, how many touch points is that strategy going to give you in your system? How many hours of interaction? How many platforms? Typically, it's one platform Typically, it's, one or two touch points, and typically it's less than an hour of interaction. And so you can see there, just from the actual scientific research that's been done versus the stuff that most people are buying into, this is not going to do what we want it to do.
Right. So it's not fair to expect that to magically fix your business when it clearly doesn't hit the requirements needed for people to get introduced to you, to explore you enough, build that know, like, and trust, all of the touch points, and actually make a purchasing decision. Now, that doesn't mean it's not a good strategy, and it's not something that could definitely be part of a beautiful system that all works together, but it's not a magic bullet. So you need to look at that system and figure out what are all those touch points to actually move people to making a purchasing decision, and kind of slow down to speed up and build out that whole system to do so.
And so the system that we want to put together, it's going to have three main parts. It's going to have top of funnel, middle of funnel, and then bottom of funnel. And typically what happens when people start their online businesses and they start buying courses is that they're not sure where even that strategy that they're buying into, that they're trying to learn, they're not even sure where it fits into that system. And so a lot of times what we'll see is that people are working on middle of funnel or bottom of the funnel type of stuff, when really the most important thing to work on at the beginning of your business is that top of funnel system. And so, for example, bottom of funnel stuff would be things like learning how to do a sales call. It would be things like doing webinars or challenges, things that are meant to actually convert a customer into a sale. That's more of bottom of funnel type of stuff. Middle of funnel stuff is stuff where you are nurturing your audience, where you're building trust and rapport to a point where you are ready to actually move them on to make a buying decision. So this would be a lot of the content creation type of strategies, where we're talking about YouTube or Facebook or TikTok, blogging, podcasting. Those are things where we're creating content to educate our audience, to build beliefs, to overcome objections, and get to a point where they're ready to buy and join.
And so this would also definitely include like an email sequence once people is in your system and giving them great content. But we don't like to rely just on an email sequence. That should definitely have some video and some other things involved, whether you're getting them into a Facebook group or you're nurturing them further, or other social platforms. The idea is they've been introduced to you somewhere. Now let's help them love you. Like, let's take them from like, oh, an acquaintance to like, wow, this person is amazing and can really help me. They have a lot of answers that I need.
Then your top of funnel stuff is really where most people should be focusing their time and their energy. And this top of funnel system is where your cold audience, people who have not seen you, who they don't know who you are yet, this is where they're meeting you for the first time. And this is how they're taking the first steps into that customer journey to becoming a paying customer client. And this is what most people are ignoring, is that they're ignoring the top of funnel stuff and they're jumping straight to the middle funnel or bottom of funnel strategies. And then they're wondering why they can't make sales. But the top of funnel stuff is the most important, because without that, nobody is ever going to make it to the middle and bottom of funnel. So what do we mean by top of funnel? This is where people are getting exposed to you. So we're talking about how to generate traffic. We're also talking about what mechanism are we setting up to be able to follow up with them afterwards. And so this could mean getting them to opt into your email list. This could mean tagging them with a pixel so that you can retarget them with different ads later on. There's different ways to do this. And really, this is not very complicated, this top of funnel stuff. But the more successful you are with the top of funnel, the easier it is to do the middle and bottom of funnel stuff.
Right. So when you're looking for a course, when you're looking for a coaching program, if they only address one of these issues or one of these parts of the process, there's absolutely going to be gaps. So you need to make sure that this is complete, that they deal with top, middle, and bottom of funnel, if those are all the elements that you need in your business, which most people, unless you're making money already and you've got some level of consistency, most people need to work on all three of those levels. Now, I have the opportunity to talk to a lot of people in this space, and I hear it quite frequently that whether it was a $300 course or a $5,000 course, they bought something, say like an Instagram program that was supposed to teach them how to get in front of new people, how to build an audience, and then how to get more sales. And they've done the work. They've often worked really hard and been super consistent. And maybe their audience is growing slightly. Maybe they've learned how to create great content, but it's not actually converting into any sales. And when I ask them about it, I said, okay, so when someone connects with you on Instagram, like, what's the sales process? Like, how do you actually get them to opt in? And like, what's the nurture process? How are you actually going to get them towards a sale? I'm like, well, I'm just going to message with them. We go into DM, and then when they say that they want what I have, then I'll schedule a call, or I'll give them a link to buy. It's like, oof, that's rough. Like, that's really not easy to do because of, what Todd was just talking about, that the 7-Eleven whatever rule, right? You need to have all of those touch points. And if you're relying on DMing someone manually to do all of those touch points and keep them in your world and move them from just getting to know you to I'm ready to make a purchase, that is a lot of heavy lifting on the hustle side. And it's very difficult. Most people do just not have the time to be able to do that effectively, because it's a ton of time to be able to do all of that messaging back and forth. So it's really important that you actually build out the system. Whether Instagram is, you're going to connect with new people on Instagram, great. But now what, right? Now we need to actually pull them into a system and a process that's fairly automated, that allows them to get to know you better, to nurture them, to move them closer to a sale and a purchasing decision.
And the other thing with the messaging strategy is that a lot of times people are trying to skip straight to the sale when they're still in the first couple of touch points. Just like you said. And one of the analogies we often use is that marketing is like dating. If you meet someone for the first time and you hit it off and now you're on a first date, you've had those first couple of touch points, and somewhere during that first date, they mention, yeah, I'd like to get married someday soon. And you hear that and you take that as a signal of, oh, well, why don't we get married? Like, this would be a great idea. Here, let's look at wedding venues. And you start down that path. Even though they kind of indicated some interest in doing that, they're not quite there yet with you, right? It's too soon, even though they expressed interest.
That's when you effectively scare them off and they run away.
Exactly. And that's the exact same thing that happens when you kind of pop the question too soon in your marketing as well. Someone just saw a post from you online and they responded to it, and now you're in a conversation and you're basically on that first date, and they're saying, yeah, I'm trying to do this, that, and the other thing, and I'd like some more information. And a lot of people will take that as a signal of, oh, they want to buy and join. And then they say, okay, well, why don't we jump on a sales call? And that's the exact problem that we were just talking about with the dating analogy.
Exactly. So I think it's really important. Yes, you need the top of funnel. Yes, you need strategies to get in front of new people, but that by itself is going to leave a massive gap that's going to prevent you from being able to make consistent sales and get to the point that you're eventually able to scale. So building out that system, building out that process to nurture, to qualify, to move them through to a sale is essential. So if you know this is a gap in your business, this is a weak point that you have to work on, we got you. Don't worry. We actually have a beautiful training that Todd has put together. Maybe you've purchased some courses in the past. They haven't gotten you to where you need to be. This is specifically for you. It's going to walk you through how to put all of this together. How do you actually put together all of these different touch points? What order you need to go in? How do you create an effective system that nurtures, qualifies, and moves them through to a sale? So there will be a link somewhere in the description, or there might even be a button depending on where you're watching this, but make sure to click on that link or click on that button, grab access, and enjoy. You've been listening to the Digital Trailblazer podcast. For show notes and information about today's guest, head to digitaltrailblazer.com. Now, if you love this episode, if you got some value, make sure you leave us a review and subscribe. And be sure to share this episode with anyone you know who could use help to build their business. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.